A 16-year-old was arrested and charged with murder for selling a fentanyl-laced pill to a child who died of a drug overdose. The 12-year-old girl who ingested most of the pill was the youngest person to overdose and die in 2020 in Santa Clara County. The child, who was not identified, bought and consumed a pill with a label consistent with the painkiller oxycodone. She was declared dead after she was rushed to a hospital. After thousands of deaths, everyone should know that fentanyl is a deadly poison, District Attorney Jeff Rosen said in the statement. The 12-year-old, along with 2 teens, contacted the suspect on November 14, 2020, and bought an M30 pill. The group videoed her lining up the crushed pill for ingestion. The statement said, "Afterward, the girl passed out and began snoring, which is a sign of a fentanyl overdose." Fentanyl is a synthetic drug that can be up to 50 times stronger than heroin and 100 times stronger than morphine, and it's commonly used to resemble prescription drugs, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. It is often added to other drugs by dealers because of its extreme potency, which makes drugs cheaper, more powerful, more addictive, and more dangerous, the CDC said. Overall, opioids continue to be the driving cause of fatal drug overdoses in the United States. Last year saw a record high of drug overdose deaths, with more than 100,000 people dying from April 2020 to April 2021, according to provisional data published in November by the CDC. It was a 28.5% spike compared to the same period a year earlier, and nearly doubling over the past 5 years. Synthetic opioids, primarily fentanyl, also caused nearly 2/3 of all drug overdose deaths in the same 12-month time frame period, according to the data. Prosecutors around the nation have signaled a greater willingness to bring the serious charge of murder against dealers who supply buyers with potent drugs that can easily kill. These dealers are essentially handing a loaded gun to unsuspecting victims, knowing that they will probably die, and they don't care, said Orange County, California District Attorney Todd Spitzer late last year in announcing a more aggressive prosecution effort by his office. A Fort Myers man has been found guilty of conspiracy to distribute drugs and of killing a confidential informant. 53-year-old Robert Ward faces a mandatory sentence of life in federal prison. His sentencing hearing has not yet been set. Ward's federal case was connected to the 4 Fort Myers police officers who were placed on leave prior to the release of the French report, an audit of the department that revealed allegations of corruption and mismanagement. According to evidence and testimony presented at trial, Ward was the leader of a drug trafficking organization that distributed cocaine in Fort Myers and other locations for more than a decade, up until his arrest in 2018. Federal investigators used confidential informants to purchase drugs from Ward. One informant, Christopher Smith, a member of Ward's organization, was killed after Ward learned of his cooperation with authorities and ordered his death sometime in 2012, prosecutors said. Smith was a 27-year-old who was gunned down in the Dunbar area of Fort Myers after dropping his child off at school in 2013. Ward solicited James Broomfield to kill Smith in exchange for $30,000, according to the news release. Investigators said they also found more than $200,000 in cash hidden inside of a storage unit in Tampa, rented by Ward. Brevard County grand jury indicted 48-year-old Brandy Vessels on 2 counts of first-degree murder by distribution of a controlled substance and 1 count of sale or delivery of fentanyl in connection to the drug overdose deaths of her 25-year-old son Austin Vessels and 39-year-old Matthew Taylor. On July 18, 2021, just after 9:30 a.m., Witnesses reported to the Titusville police that Austin Vessels and Matthew Taylor were found dead in Vessels' apartment at 3047 Sir Hamilton Circle. A powder substance later identified as fentanyl was found next to Austin's body. The medical examiner reported that both died of an accidental overdose of fentanyl. The subsequent investigation found that on the evening prior, on July 17th, Austin had been at the nearby apartment of his mother, Brandy Vessels, with the two partying and using cocaine. When the cocaine ran out, Brandy arranged to purchase more from a local dealer, with Austin joining her and providing the money for the transaction. After the drug purchase, Brandy gave the drugs to Austin, who then met with Taylor, and the two returned to the apartment, where they were later found dead. Titusville investigators arrested Brandy Vessels on January 25, 2022, and she is being held on no bond at the Brevard County Jail. The grand jury heard testimony from a Titusville police investigator and the Brevard County medical examiner before returning with the indictment. No trial date has been set in this case. A Canadian man tripping on ayahuasca stabbed a fellow guest to death at an alternative medicine center in Peru this week, rekindling public fears about the dangers of using psychedelics for medical treatment. A headline in The Guardian chalked the killing up to a hallucinogen-induced bad trip, while The Independent focused on the psychedelic ayahuasca ceremony setting. It's a major setback for organizations like the MAPS, which is responsible for the uptick in research into the various medical uses of psychedelics in recent years. While there are studies to back up ayahuasca's potential for treating drug addiction, depression, and mental illness, there's little non-anecdotal evidence to show that it makes people violent. That's not to say it's not possible. Bad trips happen, and that's why research into its appropriate use needs to continue. Ayahuasca, a plant-derived drug usually consumed as a brew, is traditionally used by the indigenous people of Amazonian Peru in spiritual ceremonies that, more often than not, end in vomiting. The most recent ayahuasca-related death took place in 2014 when an American teenager was found dead after a session at Peru's Shimbri Shamanic Center. Violence, however, did not seem to play a role. The ayahuasca tourism industry in Peru has grown in recent years, largely because its ability to treat mental health issues, especially depression, has been increasingly documented, officially and unofficially, online. MAPS is currently funding a study involving the Center for Addictions Research of British Columbia on ayahuasca's potential to treat addictions, compulsive behavior, and self-harming thought patterns. The organization, however, warns that the pharmacology of ayahuasca is not completely understood, so people seeking treatment under unofficial means are advised to seriously consider the costs and benefits before catching a flight down to Peru. Understanding ayahuasca's mechanisms requires research, and that research requires funding and public support. While it's important to make the public aware of the drug's potential risks, it's equally important not to exaggerate them.